On March 11th, 2020, Dr. Eugene Cornacchia, president of St. Peter's University, sent out an email to the entire campus community. In that email, he notified the community about the increasing severity of a new disease that had been spreading throughout the world, COVID-19.
This email will be the first formal announcement that due to the rising cases in the country and throughout the world, the university will cancel all in-person classes and events for 2 weeks.
It has now been 2 years since that email was sent. And since then, the St. Peter's community has had a year and a half of their college experience behind a computer screen. On top of remote learning, they were active witnesses to a civil rights movement that struck the nation like never before.
So we decided to ask students what's their biggest reflections over the past 2 years and what they believe in the university has done right, wrong, and about the response to the pandemic.
We were actually playing a game, and we had just finished our first game, and we had a doubleheader, and our coach had told us the news right after the game. And then when he laid the news on us, it was just absolute heartbreak.
I remember that I was a little confused. Before we heard about COVID, and it was like, stuff is getting like kind of serious. And my friend Barbara, who graduated now, she had this joke that like we're going to go on full lockdown. Nobody's going to be able to go outside. Like the army is going to pull up to everybody's like houses. Like nobody can come outside. It was like jokes.
Yeah, at first we honestly thought it was just 2 weeks and done, like they said. We didn't know the reality of it, and we really thought it was just 2 weeks. And we were like, we'll be back on the field in 2 weeks, and we'll just take it one day at a time.
But no, that was definitely not what happened.
I think the transition to online learning was both harder and easier than I expected. So when I first was like doing the process, I was like, okay, I don't know what my students are going through. I don't know what their family dynamics are, who's responsible for what. I'm the oldest daughter of 4. And so I took on a lot more responsibility of like going grocery shopping, checking in on my grandparents, doing just like a lot of things around the house. And I kept thinking like, well, if I'm going through this, my students must also be going through this.
Switching from in-person my whole life to going online, it was very challenging. It was very hard. I felt heartbreak and disappointment. We just started college, and then just having it ripped away from you to sit in your bedroom and have to do school online, it was really tough.
I definitely think that I was restricted to seeing my friends and being on campus and like having those freedoms of just going out whenever were taken from me, especially because moving fully online, I moved all the way back home. The theme would be like FOMO, which wasn't fun.
It was tough. It was very hard. Our team was doing really well. It was preseason. We didn't even get to conference play yet. We won the last 4 out of the 6 games until we got shut down. So it was kind of like a stab in the chest at that point. Like we were doing so good, and then you're done. It was awful. Like the first year, I was like, this is my first college year, and now nothing.
After the killing of George Floyd and like the riots and stuff that happened, I think it made people much more aware, and it opened people's eyes to see that racism is a thing everywhere. Although there's literally a global pandemic, people are dying every day from being sick. Black and brown people are still being killed or still being treated unfairly. Like there's nothing that separates racism from anything, and it's kind of sad, but it's eye-opening too.
With the pandemic and George Floyd's murder and everything that happened during the summer of racial reckoning, it just changed my perspective even further. And I think too, in the classroom space, sometimes there are conversations that have to happen in order to like make it very clear, like what's happening in 2020 happened in 1919, happened in 1920, 1921. We're seeing the same sort of iterations repeat itself, and we don't have to go very far to figure out like what happens next.
The university's response to COVID and what I think they did well. I think the university did a good job, especially with the mask mandate now. Although it might not be ideal, it's helped a lot because we haven't had a lot of big surges or like outbreaks on our campus, and it's been working, especially with their contact tracing and all that.
I honestly think the school did a pretty good job at accommodating everyone, going right back into in-person, especially living on campus with like cases and stuff, especially like in the athletes. Like I think they did a good job at it.
A sticking point for me, especially in that first semester and even in this semester, considering even though we are a smaller institution, it also means that it's a lot easier for an outbreak to happen and a lot easier for COVID to spread. And to me, it would have made more sense to have testing on site. Aside from that, I think we've been fairly consistent. I'm a little hesitant about this idea of like stopping masking in hallways and in certain public spaces.
I think that St. Peter should keep our mask mandate, but maybe not enforce it as much. So like kind of saying in public spaces, we encourage you to wear your mask. I think giving people the freedom and saying that you don't have to wear it is going to stop a lot of people from wearing it. But maybe just not saying those words, you don't have to, and just say we encourage, that might change a lot.
I've really learned that there are still places to find hope. Because I think during the pandemic and during the racial reckoning, it was very easy to lose hope and very easy to lose sight of like what matters, what's important, so on and so forth. But being able to see how people are creating community and finding supports and reconnecting to whatever their purpose is has really been inspiring and has been really helpful to sort of helping me stay grounded and focused in doing this work.
The St. Peter's community has faced a lot over the past 2 years. A lot has changed since the March 11th email by Dr. Cornacchia, and the community has had to adapt to these tough times, for better or worse.
Not only have we gotten the perspectives of 2 students and a professor, both sides of the remote learning experience, we've also reached out to Dr. Cornacchia himself for his reflection and where he believes the university has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic.
It really has been an unprecedented 2 years for not only St. Peter's, but for the world. COVID-19 has changed life as we know it, and its impact has been felt very intensely by so many of our students. By relying on our Jesuit mission, we took care of each other and the greater community. But we didn't do this alone. Everyone played a role in helping us weather this storm. I have always found hope and inspiration in the strength and resiliency of our community. The incidents of racial injustice have reignited and prompted difficult and necessary conversations regarding race and equity. As a university, we reaffirmed our commitment to the inherent value of Black men and women, as well as to our ongoing vow to ensure social justice and equal opportunity for all. I honestly have to say that I believe we got our COVID response right. It might not have always been easy or without hiccups, but by keeping the health and safety of students, faculty, staff, and administrators at the forefront of every decision we made, there is no questioning that we made the right decisions. An area that we could have and will do better: boosters. We have been actively collecting evidence of boosters since we first announced this requirement in December. However, our numbers are not where they need to be. In order to continue to keep our campus as safe as possible, we need all students, faculty, and staff to be boosted. We have extended the deadline to March 15th and are offering a final booster clinic the same day in the McMahon Student Center.
I'm Joey Caruso.
And I'm Evaristo Solano.
Reporting for the St. Peter's Tribune.